SQL injection. So the SQL injection is the most famous and perhaps the oldest web application attack. It is an absolute nightmare for data-driven applications. So let me talk to you a little bit about it. Thanks to Web 2.0, users can interact with applications in different ways, right? And applications can use user-supplied data to perform any task on the back end, such as selecting, deleting, updating, and so on and so forth. So if users provide valid and secure data, right, there's no problem. But what if users try to inject codes instead of data? So actually, this is a huge problem for web applications because they can confuse a lot of actual valid data and code. So that's why they need to differentiate between valid and invalid data. So SQL injection arises when the user or pen tester injects SQL statements into data that's sent to the server. And then if there's no sanitation, escaping, or any other security solution, the injected data can run on a database server. So the result of this execution will be sent back. And then lastly, the web server processes the query result, prepares the response, and sends it back to the user. Okay, so that's how a basic SQL injection works. But by performing this task, one can easily read and manipulate sensitive information that's stored in the database. So here we're not just talking about the data being like on fire, but it's like the whole system is in danger because database servers are allowed to use and issue operating system commands. And if they're not configured properly, the pen tester or the attacker can even gain access to the entire system. So anyway, we can divide SQL injections into 3 classes based on the extraction of data. In-band. So this is the most straightforward injection attack in which retrieved data is presented directly in a web page. Inferential or blind. So in this type, there's no actual data transfer, but the tester is able to reconstruct the information by sending particular requests and then observing the resulting behavior of the database server. Out of band is data that's retrieved using a different channel, such as an email with the result of the injected code. So now we also have 5 techniques to exploit SQL injections. The union operator can be used when the SQL injection flaw happens in a select statement, and it makes it possible to combine 2 or more queries into a single result set. The Boolean technique, so we can use Boolean conditions to verify whether certain conditions are true or false. The error-based technique forces the database to generate an error, giving the attacker or tester information upon which to refine their injection. The out-of-band technique is used to retrieve data using a different channel. And time delay techniques. Time delay techniques use database commands to delay answers in conditional queries. So it's very useful when an attacker doesn't have some kind of result immediately from the application. Okay, so now let's examine some of them. So open up Kali and go to BWAP. Open up the drop-down menu, and there are several types and aspects for SQL injection in BWAP. Choose SQL injection post search. Okay, so there's a simple search box here. So let's write in Marvel movies and search, and it will bring the result into a table. Okay, so now enable Foxy Proxy, and then type something in search. Go to burp, and here's a request. It sends data over post, and the post parameters are here. Okay, forward. And here comes a response. The returned data is in a table. So we're going to play with the request later. So for now, open terminal and view the page, SQL i6.php. Now, according to the levels, there are security checks. So we're going to view each of these functions after this file. So we'll scroll down. Now, this is the SQL sentence to perform search operations on the database table. And below is the code that helps to display the data. So exit, and for the functions file, the check1 function adds slashes to the data provided by the user. And of course, we also have seen that function before. And the check2 function uses a built-in function to escape SQL-related reserved characters, such as the double quote. Okay, so go back and open up Chrome. And I'm going to open phpMyAdmin, choose Movies Table, and open the SQL tab. And I'm going to paste the SQL sentence used in the page here. So this is PHP syntax. I'm just going to clear it. And this is the pure SQL sentence to perform the search. And SQL injection happens by injecting this sentence. So let's type something here. And here's the result, one line of data. So what happens if you add a single quote? Okay, so you'll get an error because single quotes are special characters to SQL. And the first two of them are paired, but the last one is not. And it confuses MySQL. So now what happens if you add a hash symbol here? Hash or pound, whatever. It'll execute, no errors, because the hash character is also reserved for MySQL. The hash is used to comment the text in a line, as you can see here. So I think that gives you a pretty good example of how SQL injection works. So now you can do the same thing on the BWAP page. Put in a single quote. You get an error. Put in a hash. And no errors. So that also means that you can execute SQL. So now let's write some smart queries to get data from MySQL. Add order by 10. And by the way, order by 10 will order the result by the 10th column. And if there is no 10th column, then you'll get an error, as you can see here. So that way you can discover the column numbers in a result set. Okay, so it's not 8 also. But it's 7. So 7 columns are in the result, but only 5 of them are shown on the page. So now we can use the union operator to merge our own select query. So I'll write this in to see what columns are displayed on the page. And here's the result. 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th columns. So now instead of these numbers, we can use SQL statements and functions to pull data from the database server. And now I'm going to paste this payload to find these values. And the version of the database, the current user of the database, and the current database. In an SQL injection process, you extract data step by step. So first you get the version of the database, then the name of the user, and then your current database. Then you can pull data through databases, tables, and columns. So that's the way we're going to do it. Okay, now with this payload, discover the database names on this server. And here are the databases and their properties. So the target database is BWAP. And paste this payload to see the tables of BWAP. And here it has 5 tables. So here now you can see the row numbers of the tables. And this is where you get to choose a table to target. So I'm going to get the columns of the movies table. So here are the column names. All right, so now we can pull data from this table, write this payload, and we'll put data in the first column. All right, so now, in this scenario, there's no crucial, any important information, right, in this table. But just think of it as being able to execute SQL statements. So then you can get, well, almost everything from the database if the current connection user has rights. So in this example, we can do all of that. For instance, we could get MySQL users and their hashes with this payload. And you can always crack hashes later. Now remember earlier I was saying database systems generally have the capacity to execute operating system level commands. So that means that you could possibly, if you were so inclined, run such a task. Okay, so I'll say that, for instance, you can view files on the system, right? So the magic file can be loaded onto this page with this payload. Now, I think you'll remember the content of the password file. You can also upload files to the server, actually to the database server. But you do have to bear in mind that your connected user should also have the rights and permissions in order to be able to write data to a directory on the server. So I'm going to upload a sample shell to the BWAP directory, but I can't. So I need to find a particular folder to see if it exists. And let's see if I can find the documents folder. So paste the payload and search. And yes, we upload the shell. Actually, it's not a regular upload. We just wrote some data to a file on the server, that's all. And I write a simple PHP shell like we used before. And now let's see if we can run some commands. Go to the documents folder from the URL and call shell.php and add cmd as a parameter with a Linux command. And here is a result. Now, of course, you can change the commands. Who am I? Which NC? I want a different shell, a netcat shell. All right, so now I'm going to listen on terminal, nc-nlvp4443. Okay. Now I'm going to paste this one-line netcat reverse shell and hit enter. All right, so you see the response doesn't show up. So I think it works. And yep, it works. bbox connects to the port on Kali. And you can run Linux commands now and run this Python code to get a bash style shell. Okay, so we got a full shell from a simple SQL injection. So the rest is up to you and your imagination. And now we're going to look at some different examples.